Hello, everyone. Good evening, afternoon. Feels like evening, but it's probably only afternoon. Um, well, let us start with, I guess it's going to be homework review. I got,
I have an announcement.
oh, yes, please.
If
I didn't see you, Brenda. Go for
I'm
it.
here, I'm here. If you have not signed up for the in-person workshop, there are still slots left for the morning and afternoon tomorrow. It's the pruning workshop. So remember to sign up for that. They are not mandatory, but it's really good experience. You get to go around the grounds and cut things. And also, please remember to send your name as you would want it to appear on your certificate. You can do so in the chat today. I will be out the week after next, so I'm getting everything ready. So the week that you graduate, I think I will not be here. I'll be doing site visits. So I got to get everything ready for you now. So thank you very much for your cooperation. Someone just asked if you can pick up cards tomorrow. Yes, I will be on site tomorrow. Morning works best. In the afternoon, about 1 o'clock, I will be leading a walk on site for master gardener. So there will be nobody inside the main office. So please, anytime between 8:30 and 12 would be fine tomorrow for card pickup. And that's it. That's all I have.
Cool. Thanks, Brenda. Also, you guys probably know, but the following week, there's no class. So the 23rd and the 26th, there will be no class, and we start back up on the 30th. Just reminded me when Brenda said she's going to be out that following week. So yeah, just remember no class. And then the in-person workshop is this weekend. And I think this one is irrigation. So
Yeah.
it'll be definitely a review of what we're going to talk about today, but then we also have a secondary class.
Martha.
Yeah, after. Oh, yeah. Cool. So yeah, we have a secondary class with LEDWP rep, and it'll kind of finish off the rest of our irrigation.
And you reminded me of one more thing. Someone had messaged me about getting other people from their office to take this course. We have room in the English course. Send me an email or a direct message now so that we can get them the videos. They can review the week that we're off, and then that way when we come back, everyone's caught up. So yes, we can do that, but we have to do it quickly. And that was all I had for sure.
Okay, cool. Yes, that is a good point. You guys get to like catch up on homeworks on that week off, so that's cool. Speaking of homework, let's do a little homework review of last class. So the soils class. Several of you already sent me the homeworks. I just wanted to mention the kind of things to think about, and then we could do a breakout room today and try it, and maybe you guys could talk amongst yourselves about what you found. And so yeah, several of you already sent it, and I just wanted to remind you of the two tests we had for homework, which was one was digging the hole to, well, first of all, you dig the hole and you do the soil test by feel, so the texture feel one. That would be the ball or ribbon test. So that was one part of the homework. And the second part was doing the infiltration test, which is that same straight-sided hole that's about a gallon a pot size. You fill it with water and see how long it takes to drain. And I had several, I must have not explained it very well because I had a lot of people that seemed to be confused by the times. So anything that's less than 30 minutes to fully drain, that's considered a fast draining soil. So if it took 3 minutes, that's fast. If it took 15, that's fast. Anything under 30 minutes. And then anything from 30 minutes to an hour to drain would be medium speed draining soil. And then anything over an hour would be slow draining. And then, you use that flow chart to figure out the actual texture class. So I know some of you, well, actually, yeah, let's just, basically, yeah, we'll do the breakout rooms. You guys kind of talk about what soil did you find? And then was your infiltration rate fast, medium, or slow? And did that correspond with what you found in terms of the soil type? So if just as a kind of refresher, the soil types, like a sandier soil. So if it was on the sandier side, like a sandy loam or just a pure sand or something like that, you might find that it infiltrates more quickly because of that higher presence of sand. And then maybe a soil that had a really long ribbon and indicated some clay, you might see a slower draining soil. So, so yeah, just seeing if your two results corresponded or made sense together, because they don't always make sense. Sometimes you have a sandy soil, but it drains really slow. So just seeing if they did, and then yeah. So let's do a breakout room. I'll just assign these randomly. Actually, wait, I can't find it anymore, Lydia. Maybe, sorry. You're on mute, Lydia, if you are talking to me.
Sorry about that. Here.
Yeah.
I'll just make you the host like I did before, and then maybe you'll see it.
Yeah, it's weird. I can see the polls, but oh wait, maybe it's in the no. Oh yeah, here it is. Sorry, I found it.
Well, I made you the host. So.
Oh, got it. I'm like, I found it. Okay, so we have about, let's see, like 17. Maybe we'll do 5 breakout rooms so that there's about 3-ish per. Yeah, and then we'll do that until about 5:15. We can be in the breakout room, and I think I can hop around to the different breakout rooms. So I'll try to do that. But if I just get stuck in one room, sorry guys. So I'll assign, what did I say? 5 breakout rooms. Oh, darn. Sorry, guys. Okay, wait. Having a little technical difficulty here. Weird, I can't assign more than...
Oh, you can't assign more than 4?
I can't assign more than 1, actually. It just gives me the option when I try to go up or down. It just gives me, oh, here, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing 5 breakout rooms. I'm going to start that now. And then at 5:15, I'll end the breakout rooms and we can kind of chit chat a little bit about what you guys talked about. But if some of you understood it more than others, help everyone and try to all share what you found. And here we go. Okay. Hi, Laura. We're just in a breakout rooms. I'm going to just assign you to one. We're just going to be in it for another 2 minutes, but we're going over the homework. So I'll just assign you to one quickly. See if I can. I think that worked. Oh. Did that work, Laura? Are you still there? Oh. Okay. Yes. Okay. So can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions that came up during the chats? Did you guys all get a chance to share your results? Maybe there wasn't a lot of time, but anything that you guys, any conclusions? Anyone wants to share? I do have the room, so I can ask a person from each room. How about, unless somebody wants.
Ask Hector to share.
Hector, you want to share?
Hector's is bomb.
Okay.
I'm just saying that because
Hector, let's share. I heard yours is bomb. I want to hear.
Yeah, screen share. Hector, screen share.
Okay, I'll screen share. Can
No,
I?
can you screen share?
Oh,
I don't have the.
a
I don't
good
have the ability.
question. Wait,
Doesn't matter.
but you're hosting, so.
Oh wait, I think I might be able to.
Well, we did in the breakout rooms.
Oh, you did? Yeah, you can do it in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, because you guys are like the hosts in the.
Right.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, because you're host right now, so.
Yeah, but I was going to see if I have Hector's homework that I could draw from.
No, in the morning.
Is this your homework, Hector? Can you guys
Yes.
see this?
That
Wow.
looks like it. Look at that. I'm telling
Yeah.
you.
Wow.
Yeah, so Hector did like a nice little visual report. Do you want to talk me through it and I can scroll down?
Well, I dug a hole like my audio. Yeah.
Yeah.
I dug a hole a foot inch high. You can see right there the Milwaukee tape, and filled it up. Lasted around 37.08 minutes till like it fully drained out.
Okay.
And I used a fancy measuring. I
Yeah.
forget what it's called, but
Totally.
I used it because that's the only way I could take out millimeters. So yeah, I did the rivet
Wait, is this
test, like
millimeters
I
or
said.
this centimeters? This is centimeters, I believe, right?
Millimeters.
Really? Millimeters
Yeah.
would be really, really tiny. I think
Yeah.
this is centimeters.
I got it right here. Yeah,
Well, mm's at the top, but it's got to be centimeters, unless you're saying, because
Now you can't see it. Yeah, it was an
well, if it was millimeters, that would be less.
It's 31.8. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
so that would be
Sorry.
okay, so
Typo.
that would be 3 centimeters.
I did it in the night.
No, fair enough. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We can convert that easily to 3 centimeters. That's what it
Yeah.
would be. So
Mhm.
totally makes sense with the results because you, looking at the chart, the flow chart, I believe everything from 2.5 to 5 centimeters is some kind of clay loam. And then what did you find that you had?
I found that it was according to the chart, it was what was it?
Oh yeah,
So
sandy
sandy.
clay loam. You have it written
Sandy
here.
clay loam, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense because you say here that it was gritty, more gritty than smooth, which is exactly what it asks you on the flow chart. I'm looking at the
Yeah.
flow chart right now. So yeah, you just walked us through exactly how you got that. And then so does that, so you found you had a sandy clay loam, which is obviously, you know, kind of in the middle there.
Yeah.
But sandier because it is sandy clay loam.
Yeah.
And then your, what's it called? Your drainage rate, it's classified as what, fast, medium, or slow?
You said medium.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because it's more than 30 minutes, but less than an hour,
Oh, okay.
which would be medium, which
Yeah.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
hope for everyone that
Well,
like.
I live here in Compton. It used to be agricultural land like a long time ago, so
Ah,
probably.
yeah, and also like a loam or like a sandy clay loam is kind of like that. Like I said, right in the middle, so it would make sense that drainage wouldn't be too fast or too slow. So
Mm.
like, yeah, your results are nice because they like make sense
Ah.
with the sandier kind of ish side, but also still a loam.
Mhm.
Is anyone confused by that when we look at these results?
I mean, I got sandy clay loam from the ribbon test, but mine took about like, I said on the homework 5 minutes, but I lost track of time. So, but actually it's under 10 minutes for sure. It was draining.
Okay, so yours drained faster than Hector's.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I don't know how that.
Yeah, so that's totally possible too. Again, these are very like DIY tests and it's not like hard classifications, which still kind of makes sense to me. Like you could have a fast draining soil. It is still a sandy clay loam. So I know it's like has all the words in it, but sandy being like the kind of descriptor. So it's like a loam that's on the sandier side. And I know it has clay in there, but having sandy at the beginning actually means that it's a little bit sandier. So it doesn't surprise me that yours is a bit faster. It also, sandy clay loam doesn't mean like, because I think if you look at the triangle, the texture triangle, I have a picture of it that I don't want to pull up on the computer, but if you see the texture triangle, there's a lot of different types of, there's sandy clay loam, there's sandy clay. So each one of them doesn't necessarily fall into the category of fast, medium, slow. It's usually kind of a range. So if you're on the sandier side, you kind of lean towards it probably will be faster. And if you're on a very clay side, you might lean towards it being a slower draining soil, but everything in the middle, which is a lot, could be medium, maybe medium, slow, medium, or fast, medium, all those things. So I think yours still kind of makes sense, Natasha, in terms of having a fast draining soil and a sandy clay loam. They don't have to be the same, you and Hector's results. Does that make sense to anyone, or is that still confusing? I'm trying to see, I actually know the homeworks. So yeah, Natasha, you had that. I know Peg also had a very made total sense results. I'm trying to find someone who had one that didn't, but Natasha, you were one that you said. Was there anyone else? I think there was Mercedes. Was yours? Did your results make sense with your infiltration? Are you even here?
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Okay.
No, I think it did. It was
Remind me because I can't. I don't have it up with me.
it was Lumi sand.
Okay.
And it drained really fast. Within like 15 minutes, it was gone.
Okay, so yeah, so that makes sense. Again, sand, it's a loamy sand, so she's kind of in the middle, but there is some sand component, and she said it was gone in 15 minutes. So I guess yours makes sense. I thought there was somebody who had confusing ones, but I can't think of anyone. So great. I'm glad everybody's results kind of confirm, but sometimes they don't confirm. I guess I should just clarify in that case. And sometimes you might want to do another test. You might have to do multiple rounds of the ribbon test to double check, because what it's saying is like, we kind of have inconclusive results, which not uncommon with like these kind of DIY type tests. So you might want to do another test. I know in the past, some people have found like they had clay soil, but it was like draining really quickly. And then it turns out they had like gopher holes, like, draining it out. So that like, obviously throws off the results. So yeah, just being cognizant of like, the other options, other things that could be happening. But in general, I think the main thing is just for you guys to kind of have a sort of hands-on experience with like kind of relating that pore space with sandy soils and the larger pore space, meaning faster draining, and also like, and for clay, less pore space being a little bit slower draining. But of course, when you actually have to do the test, it's like, it's not as clear cut. But if anyone has any questions about it. Yeah.
I have a question. I was a little I just did it, so I didn't email it, sorry. But
Yeah.
when I did it, I wasn't sure if it would be loamy sand because it didn't really form a ribbon, but it was really sticky and formed a ball easily, and the ball stayed.
Okay, so the ball stayed. So yeah, if you follow the flow chart, you do start with the ball. You said yours formed, and then if you can't form a ribbon, then yeah, that's the flow chart basically says it's loamy sand. If you can't form a ribbon at all and it just kind of crumbles when you push it through your fingers, it just kind of falls down. Even if you're feeling that it's sticky, that is still an indication that it's loamy sand. It's because like, oh yeah, because actually I think someone also showed a picture of their hand with like soil on it. Having soil on your hand is not indicative of silts and stuff. Sorry, this is a little off your topic, Anna, but I just remembered. If you can like easily get it off your hands like that, and it's not really difficult, like you don't have to scratch it off, then it's just, dirt kind of thing. But silts are like really hard to get off. It's not just like dirty hands. But anyway, back to what you were saying, Anna. Yeah, so you really just go in that order. Even if you had a little bit of stickiness, the fact that it can't form the ribbon is kind of the more important part. And then you would get to like, if it formed a ribbon, that's when you start to kind of feel for like the texture and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Again, this is like, unfortunately, it's not the most, I mean, that's how these tests are, but it's not going to be like perfect cut and dry. But yeah, the idea is to like get close to what kind of soil you have. And usually that, I think, just zooming out, that's enough for what you need it for. We're really just trying to make sure you're planting appropriate plants in the right spot. So if any of you have a really fast draining soil, you don't really have to worry about maybe routing water to that zone, or that a high draining, a plant that needs good drainage is going to do well there. It's like a Fremontodendron, it's going to be great in that fast draining soil. So it's more for that, like just kind of generally knowing like, is this fast, medium, slow? Like what kind of soil do we have here for the plants that I want to plant? Because that is the categorizations also of the plants. It's just going to be like fast, medium, slow, at least on your flashcards. Okay, so I will get into the lecture for, oh wait, I guess I should do the full screen. And we're going to talk about irrigation. So let me grab my notes and move things around. Okay, so this is the first part of irrigation. We're going to talk about basically the different factors that affect how much we irrigate. And then we'll talk a little bit about the different delivery systems that you use, and how when you're trying to irrigate, you're really trying to mimic the seasons, our seasonal weather patterns with native plants. And then that last one, we actually don't get to until next lecture because I don't have enough time. But so to start, we're going to talk about a lot of the factors that affect how much to irrigate, like I just said. But a big one is the plant communities that these plants come from. And this goes back to that second lecture with plant communities. And as you know, there's a lot of different plant communities and different bioregions in California. Most of our gardens that we tend and you see in the landscape are going to be a mix of plants from these four plant communities that are listed in the beginning. So chaparral, coastal sage scrub, oak woodland, and desert plant communities. That's like a majority of our plants that we kind of have in the horticultural landscape. Not to say that the other ones aren't out there, but those are the more common ones. And you usually have a mix in your garden. So unless you like planned it and designed it to be like only chaparral or something, which is cool too. But most of these plants that are in these 4 categories or these 4 communities are pretty drought tolerant. So they have some strategies for tolerating high heat and, you know, no water in the middle of the summer. So they're pretty drought tolerant, but those strategies are for survival. They're not for aesthetics. You know, they're not to stay green all year long. Some of those strategies mean like they lose their leaves and they look kind of crispy, and that might not be what like a client wants, or that might not be aesthetically pleasing for everyone. So you really have to know your plant. You know, you want to know what kind of plant it is and where it's from, especially if it's from like riparian areas or any area that's wetter than, you know, where we are here, or like a coastal plant, or even a higher elevation. So alpine plant communities are those in, you know, up in higher elevations. And then there's also just varieties. Like there's Ceanothus that's local to, you know, Los Angeles County, but then there's a lot of our Ceanothus ground covers, like Point Reyes, for example, is actually from the Bay Area. So we can plant it, it survives here, but knowing that it's from the Bay Area where they actually get more rain and, you know, typically it's a lot cooler, you have to keep that in mind, that might mean you have to water it a bit more. You know, so basically knowing what kind of, where the plant comes from, its origin, where its natural distribution is going to be really helpful. And I know there's like, you know, hundreds of plants, so it's hard to know all of them, but that is the idea, is to start to get to know the plants and where they are from. Because if they're from those areas that are a bit wetter or cooler or whatever, and you're planting them here in Southern California, especially if you're planting them inland, you probably have to compensate and water them a bit more because they're used to more water. Let's see, I think that's it for, wait, I think I had something else on this one. There's a lot of things that I want to cover and make sure I say, so sorry. Oh, right, so yeah, I said that. So basically, yeah, natives, like all natives don't have the same watering needs. That's just kind of the message I'm trying to get across. So there's not going to be a one size fits all for your irrigation. So it's hard to have a formula, like just water it this much on this month and this many times a week, because of course the plants, it depends on the plants and also all of the different factors we're going to talk about in a little second here. So it's really just about trying to find the kind of optimal watering, like sweet spot for every plant in the garden, you know, because it's, you know, kind of a, they're not going to all be the same. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so the different factors would be, we usually categorize them as biotic or abiotic features that affect how much you irrigate the plants. I think I already said that they evolved to survive on varying amounts of water, but some abiotic features, which would be kind of the givens. These are non-living, kind of like they're kind of not changing. So the abiotic factors would be things like your soil texture type. So last class that we talked about. So this is referring to the mineral makeup of it. I'm not talking about the soil biology. I'm talking about literally just the soil texture. Is it a sandy soil? Is it a sandy clay loam? Like that is not going to change over time. And of course, as we just discussed in the homework review and all class last class, that knowing what kind of soil texture you have helps you understand how much infiltration, if it's fast or slow, so that, and how long soil holds on to water. So those sandy soils are not going to hold on to water very long, and they're also going to infiltrate very quickly. So you might have to apply more frequently with a sandy soil. And, you know, with a clayier soil, it's going to hold on to the water because it has a higher water holding capacity. And also it infiltrates more slowly. So you might have to water less frequently, you know, so they would be maybe on different schedules, the same plants, but different soil textures. So also I should note the soil texture type. So for example, if you have like, you know, plants in pots that have this kind of artificial soil or whatever the potting soil is that it comes with, that is not going to have a soil texture because they're not using this. Soil texture refers to like soil in the ground. The soil that's in a pot though is usually blended for lightness, to be very loose because they want good drainage. So those typically do drain more quickly than, you know, like a clay soil or something. So they drain very quickly because they're actually made that way. So if you do have a container plant, or you have a, you know, container filled with that artificial soil or that bag soil, know that it is probably going to drain quickly. So you might be watering those more frequently. Other abiotic factors would be the kind of obvious ones like the light, shade, heat, wind. Light, so obviously anything under the canopy, anything in the shade, it's going to have, it's cooler in the shade. It doesn't, water doesn't evaporate as quickly. So you probably don't have to water as much if something's in the shade. And that's, opposite for something that's just full blasting sunlight all day long. So obviously light has to do with water loss, and you have to, compensate for that. Then there's clearly heat, which is, high temperatures. High temperatures, we know more evaporative loss of the soil, but also the plants are transpiring more. So they're kind of sweating it out a bit more. So you have to replace that water, and you might have to be watering more frequently when it's hotter, or just getting ahead of a heat wave that is coming. If it's going to be a heat wave coming, you want to water before that, not like when it's hot, because that's kind of too late and it's not the best time to water. And let's see, is there something? Oh, and that also goes for reflected heat. So not just like high temperatures, but reflected heat. So in our kind of urban landscape, when we have, something that's hemmed in by our like concrete infrastructure, that's reflecting a lot of heat. So it's the same plants that are in like an island, one of those islands in the middle of the road, like a traffic island, are gonna probably need more water than the same plants like in a park setting where it's cooler and there's more canopy and things like that. So keeping those kind of things in mind, like location and whatnot. And then lastly, wind. Of course, when there's a lot of wind, like a Santa Ana, like what we are starting to see, this is the season for them. Those are literally sucking air from the plant sucking water from the plant too. So that air is drying, as just being a human being outside, you feel drier. Same for the plants and same for the soil. So when there's a Santa Ana wind event coming, you want to water ahead of time too for those. And then lastly, abiotic factor of kind of put it all together, but topography and aspects. So is it north facing? Is it south facing? And this is like, you think of it terms of like your neighborhood, like is this whole side of the cliff facing south or north, but also zoomed in like for your site. So is this the south side of the house or the north side of the house? Because south facing is going to get sun all year long, and then north facing won't get your sun all year long. If there's something in the way, like a house and the north side of the house, because the sun is lower in the sky, starting to get lower in the sky right about now. So when it's on the north side of something, that's the side that's getting blocked. Gosh, I'm saying that really confusingly, but I hope everyone understands that. Anyway, basically, north sides are going to be shadier generally, especially in the winter time. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also the topography of like I was saying, of your neighborhood. Are you in a canyon? Because obviously those collect water, and versus are you on a slope where water's shedding and the water's not infiltrating as much because of just natural gravity in the slope. So knowing that, and then again zooming in again with that topography, like knowing the watershed not just of the neighborhood, but knowing your watershed, like where does the water drain on my site, like on the garden, on this landscape, in this garden or this home. So what's the high point in the garden? Where's the low point? How does water drain just on that little site too? So those are going to help you determine the kind of areas that need less or more water in your garden. Okay, and then the biotic factors, which are the more dynamic and changing living factors that influence water, would be first just plant water uptake, plant water uptake and transpiration. So the plants take up water through their roots, as we all know. And there's also transpiration, which is the loss of water through the plant's leaves. And that's kind of when they're transpiring on a hot day, they're losing more water through their leaves. And the water uptake doesn't always keep pace with the transpiration. So they're not always sucking up water as fast as they're losing it, especially in a really hot day. And you might see that as like kind of flagging on your plants, especially in the heat of the day. You'll see the tips just kind of flagging, kind of flopped over. And if those flagging tips recover by nighttime or by the time it cools off in the next morning, they've recovered, then that's just a normal response. The plants are just like, whoa, that was really hot. I don't have enough water to keep these little tips up. I'm just gonna chill until it cools down. If they don't recover, that's when you would wanna consider maybe your irrigation. But if you're just seeing flagging on a really hot day, especially if it's like the right plant for the right location, you know it's appropriately planted. And especially if it's the first year or like the first year of the plant's life in that spot, that's just the plant probably adapting. You don't want to be seeing that every day. Like they shouldn't be flagging every day. It should just be like something they're adapting to. If you want to control for that, you can do some temporary shade cloth or something on a new plant to avoid that happening. But again, it's just a stress response, and they can, if they're coming, if they're we call it turgidity. Basically, if the plants are full of water the next day and they're very turgid, so they're full of water, then that means they're fine. They had enough water. They just, in that moment, it was a little too hot. So in that case, you don't really have to do anything for it. And especially if you see soil moisture, you know, if you're seeing flagging and there's soil moisture and you know you've watered, then like maybe, you know, just let the next day pass and see if they recuperate. So yeah, so plant water uptake and transpiration definitely has an impact. And different plants kind of transpire at different rates. So you'll just notice their kind of cues basically. And also younger plants. So the age of plants, younger plants are usually transpiring more. And that's why we have to, and also more sensitive. So they're more sensitive, and also they have smaller root systems. So they truly just aren't really as mature to be able to handle the kind of heat stress. So a lot of times a younger plant, we have to water more frequently just because of that. The smaller root system, you know, because they are really kind of just still, they're the same root system that they came in the pot, or maybe a little bit more, depending on how old they are. But an older plant, like an established plant, so 3 years or more, those plants are going to have much more, if you did it right, much more developed root systems and more extensive, and they can actually tap into water sources all over the landscape, or further out in the landscape, or further down. So those plants maybe don't need as frequent of watering. So like this kind of point says, is usually the first year gardens are a little more inefficient on water. So they're not really as efficient because of that, because the plants are young and don't have extensive root systems, and they can't really take long stretches of time without watering. And so when you're establishing it during that year or two, sometimes it takes as much water as a turf garden. So you're probably not going to see those, those like, you know, savings until later. Lastly, there's organic mulch, which is, so with organic mulch, we know that's organic matter that's going to break down and add to that soil biology. So we talked about soil food web last class. So the mulch breaks down and adds to the soil biology. And also, so that's kind of the biotic part of it, but also just physically it's sitting on top of the soil and it absorbs water. So sometimes you have to water a little bit more, you know, so maybe, you have to water a little bit more just to get through that layer of bark, you know, because essentially it's like a little sponge sitting on top that absorbs it. And if you don't water a little extra to just make sure that it actually waters down beyond the layer of mulch as well. Let's see if there was something else I wanted to mention about that. Okay, so this is a great little guide. This is for, I know I was saying there's no formula, but this is kind of a nice guide. And this is on page 47 of your student workbook. So you don't have to like copy this all down. And essentially this is, oh wait, I have a copy of it right here. Yeah, so this is helpful for kind of just the first year of watering, because it is a bit more frequent that you're watering, and it goes by season of when you planted out the garden. So it kind of starts from the easiest time to plant to the most challenging time to plant. So it's easiest to plant in fall and winter, and then summer is a bit more difficult because of those higher temperatures. Oh yeah, that red arrow I should mention. This is a basic guide, and it's not, don't use it as an absolute rule, because as we've already talked about with all these other factors like the soil, shade, adding all those in, you would adjust this, you might adjust this schedule. This is just so that you understand you're probably watering more frequently early in the plant's life. and then you want to be tapering it off. So, oh yeah, and with summer planting, you also have the handout for this class. Another handout besides the one we're looking at right now is the summer planting with California native plants. This is a great little guide for kind of things to do and things to avoid when summer planting, because obviously we can't, you know, sometimes we miss the window and you want to plant in summer. So that kind of is a nice little handout for that. And really helpful, or I guess a reminder is that with the summer, the reason summer planting can be difficult is not only that high heat, so you have to water more frequently. You can see here on the right-hand side, with the summer planting, you're planting almost like, I'm sorry, you're watering, you know, more than once a week, whereas a fall planting maybe just once a week. And of course, this might change based off of the soil type you have. But then, you know, goes down to once a week in the fall. In the winter, maybe less, especially if we're getting rain. And then the following summer, you'll see once a month or not at all. So you want to be tapering off that watering to the next year. You know, the idea is to taper the watering off until the kind of minimum that the plant needs to look good and thrive. But the first year, again, is a little bit more frequent. Oops, sorry. I'm good. Got on my papers. Okay, so yeah, but with summer planting, it is easiest to plant plants that are used to summer watering. So like our riparian plants that like to be streamside or by streamways, those plants can handle water in the summer. And also a lot of grasses can do well in summer planting, or our desert natives. So anything from the desert plant community is a little bit less risky for planting in the summer, because a lot of them are used to kind of like monsoonal conditions every so often. And desert plants are usually pretty good about just uptaking whatever water comes, because they are adapted to there being so little of it. So the plants that you want to be careful about with summer planting are the same plants that are sensitive to summer watering. So those would be things like Arctostaphylos and Ceanothus. Those are a little bit more sensitive to summer watering. So you might want to avoid planting them in summer, because again, then you're risking watering them in summer because you have to do it pretty frequently when they're new. So you're just putting yourself in a risky position. Also, Fremontodendron and Trichostemma, the woolly blue curls, those two also do not like summer watering. So I would resist trying to plant them in summer and maybe wait till fall to plant those ones specifically. And let's see, new plantings. Yeah, so it should be clear that the new plantings need to be watered more frequently than established ones. And you're obviously adjusting with the season. So the rainy season, you should scale back because it's cooler. It's not, you know, the water loss is not as much through the soil or the plant. And hopefully we're getting rain. So yeah, the idea is just you want to be adjusting and tapering it off, and it will be more frequent in that first year. Okay, so when natives want water and why? Basically, as we've talked about, native plants are adapted to our climate, which is the cool, wet winter and a warm, dry summer. So they are evolved to get their water in the winter, and they actually do most of their active growth usually in like fall, winter, spring. You know, winter, that's when they're doing most of their active growth, even if it's just below ground. So that's when they want water, and that's when they are adapted to receiving a lot of water, or a lot for Southern California, I should say. So we want to take advantage of all the rain we can get, and rain makes the most sense to water that time, but also that's the best quality water. You know, rainwater is pure, sweet water. It also has a little bit of nitrogen in it, rainwater does. So that's why, like, you know, things can kind of perk up afterwards. And obviously it's free and it's just high quality. So we want to take advantage of those rainy days if they, you know, when we have them. And let's see, as a general rule, it's time for an irrigation. Okay, yeah, so generally this is like kind of, yeah, another kind of guide, but if you want to do a deep soak, when, I don't know if I said this, but essentially you want to be doing infrequent deep waterings. That's like the ideal. And that's a lot like the way our water comes, so our rainwater comes that way too. When it's rainy season in Southern California, that's not rain every day at 4 o'clock, like in some places. This is like, usually we'll get like 3 days of rain and then nothing, and then 3 days of rain a couple weeks later. And that's kind of, they like this kind of pulsing style of watering, and that's what we're trying to mimic. So it's time for a deep soak when the soil is dry at a depth of 3 to 4 inches, especially in a new garden. So you check down at least 3 inches or 4. And if it's dry down to that, then you can consider, okay, I'm going to do a watering, a good deep watering. And said another way is basically don't water if the soil surface is moist. If it's moist on the surface, it's moist below, and it's not necessary to water yet. So you do want to water early in the morning or late in the evening, because it gets the cooler part of the day is better. And best to check them first thing in the morning to evaluate their water needs, because the plants are the most full of water. Like I was saying, they're the most turgid. So you want to water them, or at least check them for whether or not they need watering in the morning. There are guidelines. I have a slide later about the LEDWP kind of guidelines, because there are some restrictions. And but that's a later slide. How to water. So I have 2 little cards here for that. Again, we're trying to replicate our rainy season, and especially in that first year, so the establishment phase, we want to replicate a good wet year. So typically we get about 15, 14 inches of rain in Los Angeles, but you want to get a good rainy year. So like you want to have at least 15 or 20 inches of rain in that first year. So you might have to supplement a little extra if we have a La Nina year like this, and it's not anticipated to have much rain, because to get established, they need good raining. I was going to say raining events, but also watering events. So they need good watering events in that first year, because we want to establish those roots and stuff. And the idea is we want to mimic the rain as much as possible in frequency, but also in spread. So again, we want the deep infrequent soaks, because that's how our rain comes in Southern California, but also in spread, in that we want that uniform rain down. It rains everywhere evenly. It's not just like raining at the base of the plant, so it's not just spraying the hose right at the base of the plant. You want to get the surrounding soil, because that's what we want. We want the roots to be encouraged to move outward into the surrounding soil. Want to water as deeply as infrequently as possible without causing plant stress. Watering heavily, at least 2 feet down, and allowing good dry downs between watering cycles. 2 feet down, usually that's about an inch or an inch and a half precipitation. I mean, depends on the soil, but generally speaking, you want a good deep watering, and you want it to have a dry down. And like I said, that's kind of how our water naturally rains down on us anyway. So that's what we're trying to mimic. And though a lot of people have controllers, like irrigation controllers, you don't want to rely too heavily on them, especially that first year, and especially in winter, because if it's just automatically going off and we are having rain, you're definitely running the risk of overwatering. And if you do have a controller or any kind of automated irrigation system, definitely know that you want to be adjusting it at least seasonally. So at least once, 4 times a year, or more often, and you're adjusting because of the the different transpiration rates at the different times of year, because it gets hotter and cooler and different amounts of rain. LEDWP does offer a soil probe rebate, which Martha will talk about in the next class. And if you are using a soil probe, you want to check at least 3 inches down, of course, with a new planting and a young plant. And then with an older plant, or maybe a Prunus ilicifolia, like a larger plant, you want to check down a bit further, like 1.5 feet, so 18 inches. So if you are using a soil probe, you want to check down to make sure that they need water, and it's not just dry at the top. Let's see. Yeah, and I guess I don't know if there's any place to actually say this, but basically watering in the summertime is a bit more risky, though they can handle it. But the idea is water and increased temperature is not a good combination for native plants, because that heat is creating conditions for bacteria and fungi to grow. So heat and water, we know, like, those are kind of like nice little conditions for them to grow. So you kind of risk waking up any pathogenic activity. So you want to be good and about the dry down in summer if you are watering in the summertime. Okay, so how to water is you definitely want to water at the root zone, essentially. So watering where the roots actually are, or where you want them to be, in the future, or where they should be as the plant matures. So I think oh, there it is. Okay, so essentially when this is a tree, but this goes for shrubs and everything as well. Really the most active roots for picking up water are usually at the outermost extent of the tree canopy or the vegetative growth of the shrub. We call that the drip line. You can see that this area here would be the drip line around the plant. Obviously it would be Z-axis too, not just this 2D. So you want to be watering in this zone because that's actually where the feeder roots are, and that's where the plant roots are most active in terms of absorbing water. So that's why you don't want to do that thing where people just like kind of shoot the hose straight at the base of the plant, because that isn't where the active roots are. And that's also not where we want them to be. We want to encourage the roots to move into the surrounding soil. That is going to help them get established. Obviously we want big, extensive root systems that can tap into water all over the landscape. So that's the idea, is watering at this drip line and a little bit outwards so that you can actually encourage that root growth. Oh yeah, so these are the, what's it called? The guidelines for LADWP. They have this kind of system of even and odd days. And this is for sprinkler systems or irrigation systems. So you can, oh, there it is. Okay. You can water, there's a time frame. So you cannot water between 9 and 4. And you can water by hand anytime, any day of the week, as long as it's not between 9 and 4. But if you have a sprinkler system, you have to do this, this even and odd numbered houses or addresses situation. And you can see here too, with sprinklers, they actually have a limit. So it's only 8 minutes or one cycle of up to 8 minutes per station with a sprinkler system, with the standard ones, so the not water saving ones. And the water saving ones, they give you 2 15-minute cycles per watering day. So a lot of these restrictions actually are kind of difficult to align with what the best practices are. So you really kind of have to just take everything into consideration and just kind of make it work. So take the best practices along with whatever limitations and guidelines you have, and then make it work as best as you can. But again, you can water hand water. So you can water with the hose any day, every day, actually, as long as it's not from 9 to 4. And with drip irrigation, I know that LADWP has said that you can water more than 3 days in a row, more than 3 days a week with drip only during that establishment phase. So I don't know how they enforce that, but that's definitely something that they have clarified with us, that if you're in the establishment phase, they totally understand, and you can water more than 3 days a week, but only with drip. So yeah, we can also, I think if you have any questions about this particularly, definitely wait till Martha, which she's the LADWP rep, and she will definitely help be able to clarify that kind of stuff. Let's do a 5-minute break. So I guess 6:01 we'll come back, and so a 5-minute break. We'll meet back at 6:01. I can answer any questions also right now.
I put the link in the chat for anyone that still wants to sign up for tomorrow's irrigation workshop. And yeah, give me your names as you want them to print your certificates so we can have them ready for you. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm just sorry. I'm catching up on the chat, guys. But like Brenda said, and what I was trying to say is like knowing the microclimates on your site. So really knowing the topography is helpful, because like Brenda said, right by the hose is usually a pretty wet spot for most mows homes. And so that can be kind of like your riparian zone. So yeah, definitely a good point.
Yeah, and what you said about the shade and the heat coming off from other buildings, that does also create a microclimate. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of us are, all sandwiched together and there's some house. So even if it's south facing, if there's, a neighbor right there with a big house
Yeah.
or whatever, a building,
and
that's gonna
and a
change it.
neighbor with the lawn. So a neighbor with
Totally.
the lawn, if they're watering, put all your riparian stuff over there and use their
Totally.
water.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. I've definitely seen that where it's like the line between a native garden and someone's lawn. And it's just like, if you're not, it's just, yeah, like you said, it's just a great way to take advantage of that extra resource and just plant appropriately. So that's a case of like planting the right plant for the right location. And maybe the rest of the yard is not going to be getting watered because you don't have plans to do any watering, but you definitely know the neighbor is, so you like adjust accordingly.
And if there's anybody else still listening, whoever sent me the email or asked a question last time I was in about coworkers being able to join the class, let me know ASAP so we can get them on the roster, get them the videos so that they can use the week that we don't have any classes to catch up. And that way, when we return, everyone starts at the same pace.
Also, Hector asked in the chat if TPF will be open on Monday.
No, we are not open on Monday, ever.
Yeah.
Ever, forever, no.
No Mondays.
No Mondays. There are people here on site, but were you planning to come in and pick up your materials, Hector? I thought you already did. No, okay, guess not. So TPF, the nursery is open Tuesday through Saturday. We are not open on Mondays.
Yeah, I just need what's it called?
The book
No, the flashcards.
or the flashcards?
Yeah, the
Okay.
workbook, I printed it out a while back.
Okay.
Yeah.
If Monday is the only day you can make it, I can leave them here. Because of the holiday, I don't know who's going to be working on Monday. The what's it called? The headquarters. Sometimes there's people in the building, sometimes there's not. And we don't want, and for sure the nursery is closed on Monday. But if Monday is the only time that you can come, I can leave it on the front porch for you if you like.
In that case, until, oh my gosh, so weird.
But
The weird scheduling.
I know.
I'll
We're-
try
we're-
to go though.
well, we're
Try to go
open. We're number one, we're in a residential area. So we cannot be, we can either be open Sunday or Saturday. We can't be open both. And we have to be out of here like by 6:30. So I'm gonna see you guys. I'm gonna jet out because yeah, we're in a residential zone. Yeah, we're not like a regular business. We're an educational nonprofit. We are not our focus is education, and we support that mission by running the nonprofit nursery.
Okay, well, it's 6:01. I'm going to continue with delivery systems. So we'll talk a bit about the the different ways to deliver water. So the different irrigation systems. Really, this class kind of assumes that you already know how to operate your irrigation system and also how to calculate the precipitation rate. So when we talk about irrigation, usually we talk about it in terms of inches, so precipitation. So literally irrigators talk about like, oh, the precipitation rate of 2 inches per hour. So it's usually inches that we're talking about in referring to how much water we put down and not gallons. And gallons would usually be referred to when you're hand watering or something. But if you're using an irrigation system, we're usually talking about precipitation, which is measured in inches, like our rainfall. And that makes sense because basically the rainfall or irrigation systems are watering our crops and gardens. So irrigators have to keep in mind the inches of rain that fall and also the inches of rain they put down artificially. So yeah, this class does assume that you kind of understand what a precipitation rate is, or precipitation, at least in terms of rainfall and irrigation. And yeah, it's not really going to go into, it can get confusing if you're not familiar with irrigation systems. Just like hold on, and like it's pretty simple. I think you'll get it. And also it's not that in depth either way. So what else? But I did want to say the main thing is takeaway from the last couple slides was basically, again, we're really going for these deep but infrequent soaks when we water with native plants. That's like, really want to get that across. We do not want to be doing these shallow frequent waterings that you might be familiar with, especially like with a turf garden or like turf lawn. That's, frequent shallow waterings. They're short and they're frequent. That is like kind of the opposite of what we want for natives. So really, for any irrigation system that you're utilizing with natives, you want to try to use the strategy of what we call either cycle soak or pulse irrigation. And again, this is this kind of deep and frequent soak idea. You're essentially trying to, so you're essentially, what pulse irrigation refers to is this deep and frequent soak thing, but it's also about kind of segmenting your total run time into smaller intervals when you're applying the water. So essentially, like say I need to irrigate 2 inches. I want to put down 2 inches of irrigation. And I know with my irrigation system, that takes like an hour to do. If I just put 2 inches all at once and I just run it for an hour, my sprinklers, that might be a lot of runoff. The water might not actually infiltrate, as we've talked about. So with pulse irrigation, you're actually kind of breaking up that 1 hour or whatever the time frame is, so that you can actually apply the water for a little, like apply a little bit of the water, break, apply a little bit more water, break, apply a little bit more water, so that the entire, you do end up applying that entire 2 inches, but over the course of a couple different pulses. So some irrigation systems have that already, that, what's it called? That setting already on them, like cycle soak. And in this case, if you just set the cycle soak times. So if you, for example, had a situation where you knew I have to water 20 minutes to get my whatever inch I want to put down, I need to set my cycle for 20 minutes, but I know after 5 minutes it starts running off and it starts flooding. Then you set the cycle for 5 minutes because that's the max it can handle. And then you break up that 20 minutes into 4 segments of 5, obviously. So 4 times 5 is 20 minutes. So you do a cycle of 5 minutes and then you do a soak, and you time that too. So if you can set it for however long it takes for the water to infiltrate, that could be 30 minutes, whatever, however long it takes. So you might cycle it for 5 and then soak for 30, and you just set it to do that until it runs the full 20 minutes. So it'll just do that cycle and soak until it runs the full 20 minutes. And that would be like a setting that it already has. However, you can also just do that on your irrigation system if it doesn't have the setting, by just having multiple start times that, like, have a 5-minute cycle time. 5 minutes, 5-minute cycle set for 3, and then at 3:30 another 5-minute cycle, and do it that way. So again, we just want to try to do the pulse irrigation thing. Also, this could be over the course of like a few days in a row. Maybe you apply 45 minutes with your drip irrigation system 3 days in a row to achieve getting that 2 inches or 1 inch or whatever you are trying to achieve. And that might mean you're watering 3 days in a row, but all of that watering event, that's all considered one watering event, I should say. And that's like, that's not considered watering it 3 times a week just because you did it 3 days in a row. That's actually considered watering it one time, because you're not going to water it again for another 21 days or another 3 to 4 weeks or something. So again, that would be your deep soak, even if you did it over the course of multiple days and just doing pulsing, good watering, watering 3 days in a row or something. So
Claire, Claire,
Yeah.
there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Should we keep in mind the soil type when setting the cycle and soak?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Definitely, definitely that is what you're going to be keeping in mind. So that's why it's kind of like this whole class is like, okay, juggle all these factors in your mind and then set the right runtime. So yeah, Philip, that's definitely a good question. And sometimes it's about adjusting it. You know, you'll find like, ooh, this is a sandy soil, so I can run it the whole hour and nothing happens. So you could do that, but if, especially with a clay soil or a slower draining soil, heavy soils, you really will probably want to take advantage of the pulse irrigation, because you will see that the water is not actually infiltrating for the whole run time. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Phil, because that's the good takeaway, really. Okay, so, oh, I have to move this so I can see the actual slide. Okay, so the different, let me just make sure that I said everything on the, yeah. So again, like just want to make sure it's clear that even if you're watering multiple days in a row, that's one watering event. That counts as one watering event. Okay, so there's sprinklers. Obviously, everybody knows sprinklers. There are so many types of sprinklers. There's the like water saving nozzle ones and the, you know, the kind of old school ones like this picture is of the high volume ones. These are, generally speaking, higher precipitation rates, higher volume. They're throwing out more water at once. So you typically don't have to water as long with them. However, you can see here, this says 0.44 inches. That would be the precipitation rate. So that means it puts down 0.44 inches, so almost a half an inch an hour. And that would be on the low end, and on the high end would be something like 3 inches per hour. So if you wanted to water 1 inch and you had an irrigation system that put down about a half an inch, and you want to put down 1, you know you have to water for an hour, right? So because it's only going to put down a half an inch in an hour. So if you want, I'm sorry, you'd have to water for 2 hours. Gosh. So yeah, if it's only putting down a half an inch in the hour and you want a full inch, you have to water for 2 hours. And that might be another reason you have to do the pulse irrigation method, because to work it out with the guidelines of LEDWP, you might have to divvy it up. So, but again, mostly sprinklers, especially the not water saving ones, are going to have pretty high precipitation rates. And the pros to using them are they're easy to fix. Obviously, if they break, well, they're high pressure. So like you'll just see a geyser shooting out and you know where the broken part is, and there's just replacement parts. It also, the pro would be that it replicates rain. So it's raining overhead and evenly all over. And that comes to the third point, which is DU stands for distribution uniformity. And that's basically like you're uniformly watering an area. And that's pretty easy to achieve with sprinklers, because it's literally just the arc of the water, or the arc of the throw of the water. It just has to overlap a bit. And so if they're all touching and it's wet everywhere, you know it's watering evenly all over. That's how they're designed. So distribution uniformity is pretty easy to achieve. And again, we're trying to replicate rain when we water. So having even water all over is good, because like in this case, it's a nursery setting in this picture, but remember, you want to be watering the square footage all around the plant, not just like that one little piece where the plant is. You want to be watering around the drip line and beyond. So, and then lastly, they can be put on pop-ups. So they don't have to look like this picture where it's just like, something sticking out of the ground. It can be something that disappears below the ground. The pop-ups are the ones that, go up and down and go to the level of the ground. Cons would be, these sprinklers, no sprinkler type qualifies for the turf replacement rebate. There is a rebate for changing the high volume kind of standard old school nozzles to the rotary nozzle heads, which are the water saving ones, but that is a totally different rebate, and it's not part of the turf replacement one. And yeah, so it doesn't qualify if you are converting from turf to like a more drought tolerant garden. You can't have any kind of sprinkler, even the water saving ones. And then sprinklers also can be inefficient. Obviously, they're just spraying water in the air, so it can just evaporate, or wind can blow it somewhere else, and it can just lead to a runoff, or just you're not getting all of the water because it's spraying in the air. And then lastly, foliar diseases. So any foliar leaf kind of diseases. So overhead watering, especially in the summertime, because again, water and higher temperature means you're kind of creating conditions potentially for fungal stuff. So if you have any plants that are sensitive, because not all plants have sensitivities to or don't have issues with foliar disease. So maybe it's not a concern for you, but if it is a concern for a plant that you're using, then this could be a con. Okay, so again, so that's sprinklers, and again, the sprinklers, especially since they're high volume, it might make a lot of sense to do the pulse irrigation. I mean, we want to encourage that all the time, but it might make even more sense, especially if you have a clay soil and you have like a high volume sprinkler. So drip, you guys probably, I'm assuming people are familiar with drip irrigation. There's either the kind of, well, in general, it's a low pressure system. It's lower volume, so less water is actually being applied over time. And there's point source drip or the grid pattern or inline drip. The point source drip is basically these tubes with a system of like, you have a tube and then you have little smaller tubes, spaghetti coming off of that with that you snake through the garden around to wherever plants are. And there's an emitter at the end of that little tubing. And that emitter is essentially, you know, leaking out water slowly. And so essentially you're just irrigating by soaking a certain spot. So just wherever the emitter is. And that's, I guess, the same also for the grid line, but with the grid pattern or inline drip, you have tubes, like a tape or a tube with pre-manufactured holes at like regularly spaced intervals along the tube, like this one in the picture. There's probably, I think this would be a hole, I guess. I'm not really actually positive, but there's like regularly spaced holes, and that's where the water leaks out. So in that case, you actually have to kind of lay them appropriately so that they are evenly watering all the area that you want to water. So so anyway, drip systems, lower volume, so they do have lower precipitation rates, which means that they're applying it so that inches you put down per hour are less. And high one would be 1.6 inches, so 1.5 inches per hour, which means if you wanted to put down 1.5 inches, you only would need an hour. But there are much lower ones, like 0.16, so not even a 0.2 inch per hour. So that would mean you'd have to run it for a really long time. So drip can be challenging in that way. And also just, you really want to know what kind of, there's a lot of different types of drip tapes and drip companies and stuff. So knowing your equipment and stuff is important and helpful. But that being said, it is more efficient in that it's delivering water straight to the soil. It's not spraying up into the air. And especially if you're putting it under mulch, which can, you know, help conserve the water. So that can be just a more efficient system of delivering water. And then also it qualifies for the turf replacement rebate. So if you are converting your lawn to a native garden, this stuff, the drip systems do qualify. So that's cool. And also you can run them on much larger zones. So you can have a much larger area with drip than you would with sprinklers because of that low pressure system, low volume system. So yeah, okay, so cons would be that, yeah, if it breaks, it's a lot harder to detect, and that's because you're not going to have this like geyser shooting up. It's just going to be some leak somewhere and potentially underneath the mulch. So like looking for like a wet spot that's wetter than the other spots is a lot harder to kind of come across. And of course, also achieving distribution uniformity is much more difficult because now you're not watering overhead. You actually have to place the emitters appropriately spaced so that they're like watering their space, sorry, so that they're watering at intervals where they actually touch and overlap. So like making sure that you're watering evenly with a drip system can be a bit harder than with sprinklers. And oh, right. Also, there is, if you want to mist or kind of do like kind of a refreshing sprinkle, which you can do at any time to just kind of wash off the leaves or cool down the plants and area, you'd have to do that overhead, or sorry, you'd have to do that hand watering overhead. And there's not really, you know, there are micro sprinklers you can attach to drip systems, but they're generally kind of short and they're just like really truly mist, so they wouldn't really be able to get above the canopy of the plants. But also with drip, I think I wanted to make with emitters. So if you're doing the point source type of emitters, these ones, some errors that sometimes happens is if you put too few emitters. So just putting one emitter there at the plant. I mean, I guess when it's young, that can kind of be enough. But again, you want to be watering the whole square footage around the plant, not just one little square foot patch. And you want to, so sometimes people put too few emitters, and you actually should put more so that you get that whole square footage. And also another error would be people putting them too close to the plant. So putting it really close to the plant's stem. So you actually kind of encourage crown rot. So that's an error that can potentially happen. And also just running it for too short of amount of time. If you run it too short, then you're risking that shallow watering, which we really want to avoid with the natives. I think actually, yeah, okay, I forgot this. I'm basically talking about this. So with the inline drip though, you want to, I guess I can, well, there's no picture of it, but with the inline drip, it's just really not set. It wasn't designed to, I think inline drip probably makes more sense for like a riparian zone that you have, because you're going to be putting a bunch of lines in parallel to each other, trying to kind of evenly wet the whole zone. And it kind of makes more sense for riparian plants, or even like a small like container or like island or something, some small zone that you want to water like that. But it can be kind of challenging to water with inline drip. With inline drip. So yeah, basically you do want to make sure you understand the wetting patterns of your drip system, and that will definitely depend on the type of soil you have. If you guys remember, I have a slide later, but that kind of the stain that the water makes in the soil versus clay versus a sand. So definitely understanding the wetting patterns is going to be important for your drip systems, because same drip system on sand and clay will look different because it's just leaking. It's kind of like just sopping in one area. So in a clay soil, it might spread more, and on a sandy soil, it kind of goes down more, as we've talked about. But yeah, the wetting patterns, and also being able to convert or at least just have the manufacturer's spec sheet handy, because drip systems usually come listed as gallons per hour. And that's because they're such low volume systems. So they'll have it in gallons per hour, but that's not what we want. That doesn't help us figure out how many inches we want to put down, because we're trying to rain it evenly all over. So you do want to know how to convert to precipitation rates, which is relatively easy, and I have a slide on it, but also the manufacturers do this for you. So like even easier, just find the spec sheet. It comes with the packaging. Usually it's like right on the outside. So that will help you convert to precipitation rate, so you know how many inches you are putting down.
There's a comment from
Sure.
Peg. It says, seems like this system is more prone to plant and trees roots getting into the drip holes.
Seems like this system is more, oh, well, I don't actually see that in experience. I don't see that much unless you didn't put enough emitters. Usually the holes are very small, and they're very small. And if you are watering evenly and not just in one spot, then the roots should just be, moving outward. But if you are putting just like one emitter per plant, then the plant is like starving for water. And so it's like, I'm going to go to this. But generally with the drip lines, they actually are protected from, not just protected, but they're designed so that things can't go in. So it's hard. I haven't seen that in my own experience.
Yeah,
But,
I haven't seen that either, ever.
Yeah. The only thing I've seen with drip tape and even that would be in kind of desert agriculture situations, where they actually bury the drip tape a couple feet below the ground, or at least a foot or two below the ground for their crops, like jojoba or whatever, kind of perennial crops, and coyotes dig it up and like eat it and, for the water. So I've only seen that really, but yeah, typically you don't see the roots getting into the holes. They can't get in there. Okay. yeah, Philip mentioned kind of the same. All the drip tapes I've ever used is the hole is not like, even this hole that you can see in this picture, there's actually plastic there. Even though it looks black, it's not a hole. It's actually like almost like a slit. So it would be very difficult. Okay, so make sure that you, yeah, just understanding though, like that kind of brings up that the point source emitters are the emitters are delivering to one focal point. And so you want to always make sure you have enough, so you're not just watering one little zone. So make sure you add enough emitters, and also you add enough emitters as the plants get bigger. So again, the root system is going to be wider out and larger. So you want to be adding sufficient emitters to compensate for that larger root zone. And of course, yeah, avoid placing emitters too close to the crown of the plant. When you put it like right at the crown being like the neck of the plant. So you put it like, if my neck is buried and the rest of my body's my roots, if you put it right there, you're really encouraging the rotting of that, that crown. Okay, so I'm sorry because personally as a learner, I don't learn well like audioly with math, but so if any of you are like me, I'm sorry because I'm going to try to do it anyway. But you should kind of understand this because this comes up in your homework. This is a spec sheet for a drip system. So a drip line emitters, and this is for, sorry, the inline like grid pattern style. So you can see it says application rates. They just give you this. So this is what you got to find essentially. But the application rate is synonymous with precipitation rate. So it just means, you can see here, inches per hour. So all of these values here are the inches per hour for each type of drip line that they're offering. You can see that they have 0.4 gallon per hour, 0.6 and 1. They have a bunch of different gallon per hours, and that's usually what you'll see. But again, we don't want to, knowing the gallons per hour doesn't tell us how much water we're putting down, because we're not measuring it in gallons, we want to measure it in inches. So it's not, wait, what did I write here? Oh, okay, anyway, yeah, so really what it depends on is not the gallons per hour, because how many square feet is that gallon watering? And that's why this is kind of doesn't help us when we're irrigating, this 0.6 gallons per hour. So they actually convert it for you, and they do that by taking into account the square footage you're watering. So just because it's 0.6 gallons is being leaked out somewhere per hour, we need to know how much area is it being water, how much area is it watering, or how much area is it leaking out onto. So the more space, that little, you think of this 1 gallon, this 0.6 gallons per hour as one emitter. If it's watering a larger space, that means per amount of time, less water is actually reaching it because it's a bigger space. But if it's a small space, you probably can water it really well. So that's kind of what they're doing here. You can see the emitter spacing is these predetermined intervals where the emitters are on the tube, and then the row spacing is just how far apart you have your emitter lines. And this goes also for the point source ones. It's just, what is the square footage? Are you putting the emitters essentially like 1 square foot apart or 2 square feet apart? How far apart? Because this is in inches, but clearly 12 inches is a foot. So in this case, for example, this one here, we have 12 inches by 12 inches. That's the 1 square foot. If 1.6 gallon per hour is applied to 1 square foot, the precipitation rate is 0.96 inches per hour. So basically an inch an hour if it's 1 emitter per 1 square foot. And the way they got that is this formula that I've kind of added here. It's pretty easy to just simply put the 0.6 gallons per hour here. So you put 0.6, you multiply it by 1.605, which is just a conversion of gallons to inches essentially. And then you divide it by the square feet, because that's always going to be important with the precipitation, is like how much area are you actually watering? So when you do that, 0.6 times 1.605 divided by 1, because it's 1 foot by 1 foot, then you get 0.96. So if I wanted to water 1 inch, like I said, it basically means I have to turn my irrigation system on for an hour and 4 minutes or something, like a little over an hour because of this value. And you can see here, if the emitter spacing is even further apart, that means that one emitter that's emitting 0.6 gallons is now watering a larger area. So here's 24 inches, which would be 2 feet. by 2 feet. So we're saying 2 times 2, which is 4 square feet. So we're saying the same formula, but now it's divided by 4 square feet, which makes sense that our precipitation rate, our inches, would go down because now that same amount of water is being applied to a larger space. So now if I wanted to water a full inch, I'd need to water for like 4 hours because this is almost like a quarter of an inch an hour. So if I want a full inch, I need to water at least 4 hours. So I'm sorry if that makes absolutely no sense to anyone. Hopefully it does. And I would recommend you write this formula down for your homework because it could come in handy if you aren't familiar with how to calculate precipitation rates from the gallons per hour. But otherwise, I would actually recommend more, sorry. Okay, I would recommend more, just find the spec sheet. The idea is not that you like get really good at math in this class. It's just like know where your resources are and just look it up if you need to, is what's the precipitation rate for this drip system. And with the sprinkler systems, you should, if you're installing them or you have one, you should know more or less how many inches it puts down. You can calculate that too, but that's even more, that's for like an irrigation class in a different setting. But usually the sprinkler systems give you a precipitation rate based off of, again, the square, like how you, the area that you're watering. This is that same slide that I showed earlier in the last class. And again, this is going to show the different soils and how the water actually moves through the soil. So like Philip asked or mentioned in the chat, if you're taking into account, absolutely. So when you place your emitters, remember with clay soils, you might have to place them further apart because you can see the water actually moves laterally. And with the sandy soil, maybe a little bit closer together. And you'll notice because you'll be able to see the wet spot. You know, you'll kind of adjust to how wet the soil looks when it's being watered or after it's had time to infiltrate. Also, though, with this and irrigation is the time. So a clay soil, you might be running your system for a lot less time. You know, you might be doing pulse irrigation for shorter intervals so that it actually allows time for the water to infiltrate. And that might be where you have to do the watering over the course of a few days because it's so wet. You're like, okay, I got to wait until it actually infiltrates. It's not absorbing any more water. Wait a day and then put down another ½ inch or whatever. And then, you know, wait another day and put down the other ½ inch. And then you get your 3 days of cumulative 1½ inch, which is, you know, generally speaking, what we're aiming for. And then in a sandy soil, you might be able to run the time longer. Maybe you can run it for an hour and it infiltrates, or maybe a ½ hour or even, you know, whatever it might be. But this is something where it's kind of like you'll know the soil and figure that out as for your irrigation system. Was there something else I wanted to mention about this? I don't think so. Okay, so, and I just saw your question. The workshop tomorrow, I believe, is not open to the public. You have to sign up for the Eventbrite with the class, and they also are really trying to keep the numbers down for COVID and stuff. So there's 2 different times you can go, but it's not open to the public. However, they do give that class to the public at other times. I think you just have to look at Theodore Payne's calendar if somebody is interested in it. Okay, so yeah, so some tips, I guess. A lot of these things I've already said before, but a lot of our native plants will, they'll take a summer watering even once they're established. So we've talked about during the establishment phase, you are going to be watering the summer because they're not established. They don't have the root systems to handle that. But even once they're established, many native plants are totally down with the summer watering, as long as it's not frequent. And but you do have to know your plants. Again, some of them are more sensitive, or some, like a Fremontodendron, don't want anything to do with summer water. So knowing your native plants, but summer watering on an established garden can kind of help make it look a little bit more lush and green, if that's what the client wants. So it's possible. And then, yeah, definitely with the newer plantings, especially if you have a mixed garden, like maybe you have an established part of the garden and then you have some new plants, you are going to have the whole garden probably on the schedule of these deep infrequent soaks. So like maybe every couple of weeks or something like that, with the established garden, they're getting their deep soak, which is fine for the new ones too, but the new ones will have to have some kind of like additional waterings in between that are maybe a little more frequent, sorry, and maybe not as deep because you're just trying to water those little guys. So it's kind of like, that would be when the hand watering would come into effect and would be way more efficient, is having the hand watering for the new ones. So it's really always about finding a balance. And then the light refreshing sprinkles, I mentioned this a bit. This is something you can do kind of anytime. This is to keep the soil surface a little bit cooler and also clean the leaves off. And this is something I would recommend doing in the evening, or I guess like late afternoon. And maybe you do your real watering event like in the early mornings, but then the refreshing sprinkles you can do anytime. Wouldn't do them in the peak of, I mean, anytime as in frequency wise, not anytime in terms of the day. You definitely want to always water coolest parts of the day. So this might be something when it's really warm at the end of the day, you can wash the leaves off, cool everything down. And this doesn't count as a watering event. This is like overhead watering that's like less than 5 minutes. It's just kind of washing down stuff. This you can do and the plants will appreciate it. And this wouldn't be considered a watering event. So you wouldn't be like, oh, I watered that today when I did the refreshing sprinkle. This is just kind of considered a sprinkle. It's not, because it's really not effectively watering, because especially if you have mulch, but even if you don't, it's not infiltrating down, a foot or two. It's just kind of to wash stuff off. Okay, irrigation by the numbers. I'm lost on my cards. I think that's, okay, so just some kind of tips or whatever would be winter months. We normally expect about 15 inches. That's kind of our average in LA. So that's November to March. We're getting 15 inches. This is what the plants are adapted to. This is sustainable. This is what keeps, them alive. But a little extra summer watering, so more than that 15 inches, will keep them hydrated and more like lush and green. So that's, again, the 15 inches is what keeps them alive in the wild, but we do typically do a bit more, especially if someone is concerned about like them looking too crispy in the summertime. So generally this kind of rule is like 0, I know that sounds crazy, 0 to 1.5 inches per rain event. So per kind of irrigation every 21 days. So every 3 weeks during April and through October. So the dry season, you can apply either 0 inches, like don't apply any, because some people don't mind that dry look and don't have any repercussions for that dry look either, to 1.5 inches every 3 weeks. So again, you want to take into account your soil type, if you have shade or not, is it really hot? Is it, all of those things you want to take into account. But like in general, you could kind of be around this type of schedule. So again, it's like, a watering every 21 days. That means basically that would be 10 watering events in those, whatever that is, 6 months, April, May, June. 8 months. That would be 10 watering events in that time. And if you're putting 1.5 inches down, that's a total of 15 inches. So that's 15 inches in the dry season, 15 inches in the wet season. So again, that's kind of what you're thinking in terms of total water. And yeah, it's going to depend totally on a lot of factors, but just so you have ideas, so you're not like lost in space about what to expect. This is also just a little numbers thing. I kind of hate this thing because I like to be really specific, but that's maybe just me. But 1 gallon of water per square foot. So if I pour a gallon of water on if I could just keep it on that 1 square foot, that's essentially equivalent to 1.5 inches of rain. It's actually 1.6 inches. That's why it annoys me. So if you want to use that as like a conversion thing, you can, but it is 1.6. But if just kind of back of the napkin type of calculations, 1 gallon is about equivalent to 1.5 inches. So again, we don't measure in gallons, we measure in inches, but if you need to convert quickly, that kind of helps, but it's not exact. So I don't recommend it for me personally. Okay, so this is like a little exercise for, okay, so yeah, evaluating last year. Well, yes, it is last year's rainfall and how it affects like how we would irrigate. So this is not last year's, this is just the average for LA. And you can see, we get most of our rain in these winter months, and then that April to October, very little rain. Again, this is the average. So, so this isn't always what we get. but the average is about 15 inches. If you add up all these values, you get 15 inches of rain per year. So that's what we on average expect. What we got last year, this is actually Pasadena, not just LA. So Pasadena actually usually gets around 20. That's their average, is 20 something. So they are higher rainfall average. Oops. Okay. Gotta move this over. Okay, so this is Pasadena's. You can see the rainy season. This is from last year, so the 2020-2021 season, which is kind of how we talk about rainy seasons. So here you have the inches of rain that fall in that month. So the corresponding month, you can see 0 in all of these summer months, which makes sense. We get a little 0.07 inch in November, and you can see each month has a little bit of rain. And if you guys remember from last year, we had a pretty shitty rainy season. So it wasn't very good. And that's reflected here. We only got an inch and a half, or less than an inch and a half in December. January 0.71, which is usually pretty rainy month for us. And February we got 2. And here, this is just the same data, but it's accumulating. So essentially it just adds up each month and totals it here on the side. So this is what has total fell by that month for the year. So you can see 0.7 plus 1.3 is 1.37. So by the end of the year, I'm sorry, I didn't download the newer version of this that has these months also, but in the end, only 5.88 inches fell. So it's very similar to this info here. So essentially, this tells you how much total rain fell in Pasadena last year, 5.75 inches. And then here you have the averages. So now we have the comparison of what we normally expect. And then you have the departure of that expectation. So here is normally in July, 0.06 inches. And you can see each month it tells you the expectation. And then it has the departure. So it goes from like what the norm is and subtracts the actual rainfall, or sorry, takes the rainfall and subtracts the norm. And that shows us the deficit basically for the month. So we got 0, but we were supposed to get 0.22. So we're in the whole negative 0.22 inches. And this one over here is essentially the same as this calculation, but it's now accumulating it. So you can see each month we're in the hole. November, we're supposed to get 1, we only got 0.7, so we're negative 1.0. Even in February, where we got 4 inches, sorry, where we got 2 inches, we're supposed to get 5, so we're still in the hole. You never really catch up, at least in this rainy year. And then over here, you can see they're just doing the same. Oh my gosh, why does my computer hate me? You can see it does the same. The season to date, the norm, and this is just accumulating what the norm is. So normally, that by the end of the year, Pasadena gets 20 inches. And the difference, so the departure or the deficit is accumulated over here. So each month you're seeing like, oh, wow, in December, we're now 4 inches in debt. Now we're 8 inches, 13. And by the end of the year, it's like 14 or something inches that did not fall on Pasadena that the plants were expecting or are accustomed to receiving, I guess. So in that case, this number here really tells you what you need to supplement in terms of irrigation, because this is what's lacking. If we have a shitty rainy year, you have to make up for it with the plants so that they look good and they're not too stressed. And I know in the wild, you're like, oh, but they survive in the wild. And that's the thing is we have a lot of loss in droughts and things like that. And we are continuing to see plant loss in the wild because of our, falling rainfall. That doesn't make sense. Our dropping rainfall numbers. So anyway, I think what's useful about thinking about rainfall in inches and irrigating in inches is that when you have those numbers, you can adjust and supplement when needed. So in a good rainy year, you maybe wouldn't have to, but in a not good rainy year, you would. So in this case, for example, okay, this is where I'm going to ask you guys the question, which is, okay, so in November 2020, so last year's rainy season, say I planted a native garden, how much watering would I need to apply by the end of the year for that native garden? You don't have to give an exact number, but like something.
Sorry, can you say when did you plant again?
November 2020. I guess just by the end of where there's data here.
So how much do you have to apply when again? By when?
So by the end of the rainy season, how much water should you have irrigated and put down for that November 2020 garden in that first year of its life? Since we did have some rainfall, but I want to know how much you have to supplement.
Like
Anyone?
13 inches?
Yeah, and that's totally correct. What was your like rationale, just in case anyone's feeling shy and really doesn't understand?
Well, I'm guessing this last column is cumulative, and the end of the rainy season is like, I'm guessing March or April, and it's like between 12 and 13 inches that it has not rained during the rainy season.
Yeah, so really it's just always going to be this cumulative deficit that you need to, what's it called? You need to supplement with your watering. And if it were a new garden, I would even say you'd probably want to put down a bit more, because they are you really want to give them the extra boost, not just the norm, but like kind of a wet year is what you want to mimic. So what about if I had planted this? Does anyone remember that year? I guess that was the 2018 November, like 2018 year. It was a really good rainy year where I think Pasadena got 27 inches. If I had planted my garden in November of 2018, the year that that Pasadena got 27 inches, how much irrigation would I have put down in that winter season or that rainy season? I know you don't have the numbers, but if anyone
Almost
remembers.
zero.
Yeah, John, you said 0?
Yeah, almost zero, more or less. Just enough to keep them, if you had 2 or 3 weeks in between storms, you might want
Exactly.
to put down a little.
Perfect. Yeah. So exactly. So John remembers that year was really rainy. They're getting plenty of water, but in case the timing, like there's a dry, maybe there was a bunch of rain that fell in February, but nothing in January. I don't have the data here, but in that case, maybe you would, put down a little bit, but really generally speaking, it should be almost 0, because the rainfall is sufficient for that garden. So yeah, just comparing a 2018 year, which was a really good rainy year, versus like last year and probably this year, we'll probably need to be supplementing. So,
Wait, can you repeat again? Where did you get this chart from? Like, is this like something?
this chart is actually, let me see, I can make this, how do I do this? This is just LA Almanac. Where's the chat? Trying to figure out this motherboard here. So that's just LA Almanac, where you can find Pasadena's. It's just a quick one. The next lecture, we'll talk about different weather stations for your area, because not everybody's in Pasadena, and then we'll talk about that. But this is just so that you guys kind of generally understand, like, you need to be supplementing the water if we're not getting the appropriate rain. Okay, so a little bit more. Oh yeah, so a few more tips. Oh, my computer really wants to be on this slide for some reason. So if you have a dry winter, what we just talked about, you definitely want to add more irrigation to equal at least the average for your area. So again, we'll talk about it in the following class, like your weather stations for different areas, but you want to be trying to put down at least the average. And if it's a new garden, maybe a little bit more than the average. So, and then if there is like a Santa Ana wind event, or even like a heat wave that is coming, especially if the plants are new, so during establishment, or if the plants are outside of their natural distribution, like you have something that's typically from the Bay Area and it's in your SoCal garden, you want to make sure you put down water before that. So if you know it's coming, you want to make sure that you're watering before. So if it makes sense with your watering schedule, maybe do your deep watering 1.5 inches or whatever right before that heat event, or at least put something down so that they have some reserves to grab from. And you definitely just don't want to be watering like in the middle of the heat wave. That's like almost better to just wait. But I would say like try to get some water early in the morning at least, and if not, a couple days before. So if we have a wet winter, like that Pasadena one, you can actually keep your irrigation system turned off for the whole season. Like John mentioned, you probably could put down 0, so just turn it off. Because if it's on, you definitely risk overwatering, but also you can turn it off and then you don't need to turn it on until a couple weeks after the last big rainfall. So, and that's going to depend. So it says 2 to 4 weeks, and that's definitely going to depend. Do you have sandy soil? Do you have a heavier soil? Is it shaded? All of that. But keep in mind, if it is a wet winter, like just turn the thing off, because you don't want to risk overwatering, and especially when they're getting all the high quality water. Typically our water, our city water is like lower quality, you know, higher mineral and all that stuff. So take advantage of the rain. If you have sandy soils, okay, which goes back to Philip's point that he brought up earlier, you know, expect to increase the frequency of irrigation. So you might have to, irrigate a bit more frequently. So maybe it's not on a 21 day schedule. Maybe you do it at 15 or 10. Like, again, there's kind of finding the sweet spot. And in the first year, you might be putting down somewhere between 30 and 50 inches of water from natural rainfall and irrigation. So again, like I said, especially that first year, we saw that chart that is the average is 15 inches. So you definitely want that 15 inches of rain in the rainy season, but also in the summer, especially with an establishing garden that's establishing garden, you're going to put down probably another 15, if not more, depending on. So just keeping that in mind, like the first year, it's quite a bit of water, and don't expect any water savings that time. And then hand watering is more efficient usually in those younger gardens in the first several months. That's just going to be more efficient. Oh, I think I'm like, I'm almost done. Oh, that makes sense. 650. Okay, cool. Irrigating slopes. This is just kind of like a last little thing here. Slopes are another part. I guess I could have had this slide actually at the very beginning, but whatever. These are kind of a different beast because of the incline, you know, so water is kind of going to be not going to be infiltrating because as quickly, because it's actually just moving down with gravity. So you want to keep that in mind with slopes. I think with slopes, that's when the pulse irrigation really comes in handy, because you can apply just enough before it starts to run off, pause, apply some more. And so that you want to kind of get into that pattern with slope irrigation. And also obviously like terraces or whatever. I mean, if it was designed appropriately, this shouldn't be a problem. That's maybe on the installer or the designer side of things, but you definitely want to make sure that you're not getting a lot of runoff or erosion on a slope, and just be cognizant of it. And then of course, if you're installing the irrigation system, most of them come with this already, but consider having the irrigation heads with the check valves, and make sure that you're actually getting all the water throughout your slope, because if you don't have the irrigation heads with check valves, then you risk kind of having all of the water draining from like when you turn off the system, all the water that's in the pipes is going to kind of go to the lowest point and just drain out of that point. And then you just have like an erosion spot in your, like right next to the lowest irrigation head, or like, sprinkler head or whatever you're using. So make sure you have that with slopes. But, I have a poll. That's right. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but this is just like seeing if everybody's still awake. Okay, launch this poll. Can you guys see this? Yes. Okay, so this is just a scenario. I just kind of want to get an idea if everyone is following everything, which is, okay, we have a south-facing slope with sandy soils. It's planted with newly transplanted small shrubs and perennials. These are natives, by the way. And I'm deciding to water 1.5 inches once a month. In terms of watering, does that seem like a good amount? Does it seem like too much or too little? So this is trying to take in all those factors and make like a decision. I know there's a lot of other factors I could add here, but for the sake of the poll, do you think that's a good amount? Do you think that's too much, or do you think that's too little? I only have 33% participation, guys, so get some more answers in here. Okay, I'm seeing some results. I'm seeing results. Okay, 50% participation. Is everyone just gone? Okay, you guys, okay, got it. I just gotta cry a little bit and then you guys start answering.
I'm here.
Okay, I have any of the last stragglers get your little answers in, and before we have to sign off soon, I will show the results. Right, can't I? Yes. Okay, so you guys should see those results. You can see most people said too little, a good amount, 25%, and then too much. Does anyone want to, I don't want to point, because they want to share their rationale for their answer? I don't believe in like wrong and right answers, but I feel like there's maybe a better answer. Anyone want to share their thinking?
I'll say something. This
Sure.
is Noe.
Yeah, okay.
So depending like on in Sun Valley during September, it does tend to get a little bit like fresher, I guess you could say. So I guess I put that it's a good amount of water because it does you know, you do get the hot and the cold, you know, like how it's been like kind of like 1 week hot, 1 week cold, 1 week hot, 1 week cold. So I think with 1.5 would be actually all right. You know, I don't think it would do bad. I'll probably do that what did you say, like when the little leaf like wilts and at night it'll
The
just come back,
flagging.
the flagging, yeah, exactly. So you know, and then if for some reason it doesn't come back up, yeah, maybe add a little bit more water, but I think it should be okay.
Nice. Okay. I like, yeah. Thank you for sharing like your rationale. That's like, yeah,
Yeah.
because Sun Valley doesn't have a little freshness, but it still can have some hot days. Like it can have a
Right.
heat wave still in September. Does
Mhm.
anyone from the too little category want to say their rationale?
Yeah, this is Philip. I said too little because it was in September. I know it still is pretty warm at that
Yeah.
time, and then 1.5 inches. That's only 1 gallon. I think that you mentioned that seems pretty low. And then with
Yeah.
south facing, it's going to get a lot more sun, and it's still recently transplanted, and they're new
Right.
plants. I know they're going to take a little bit more water. So yeah, that was my thought behind it. That seemed like not enough since they're still pretty young and just been transplanted.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like Noe was saying would maybe work for like a flat garden, but the fact that it's south facing and it's a slope and it's sandy soils and they're new, like you mentioned, Philip, that makes me kind of lean towards maybe it'll be too little. But if it were like maybe not a south facing and it wasn't a slope, it was like a flat garden and maybe like a medium draining soil, I wouldn't maybe think too much. I would be like, yeah, maybe it's a good amount. So I can totally understand the rationale, but I would kind of lean towards too little, especially because we do want to put that 1.5 inches down. Like I think there's a slide that was like 1.5 inches every 21 days. So like you do want to kind of get 1.5 inches in summer, especially with a newly transplanted. You want to put that amount down. But yeah, with a sandy soil and everything, it might be a little bit more frequent than once a month. So yeah, I would lean towards too little. I wouldn't think it would be too much. Sorry for the person who said too much, but that one I would lean away from. Any other thoughts? I know it's like 5 more minutes till the end of class. So any questions, shout them out. Any whatever questions, concerns.
Yeah, I do. I have, so like in the break, you have that picture of a garden in front of a house, and I wanted to know the name of one of the plants.
Oh, is it the house with like, it almost looks like roses?
Kind of.
The delivery systems one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Is that the one, Natasha?
Yeah.
Oh, that one, that rose thing is not, it's actually called a rock rose. It's not a native. So they have natives and non-natives there. But
Wait, no, it's like, sorry, it's the one that is framing the window. I don't know if that's a rose.
yeah, it's called a rock rose, which is not, it's the genus is Cistus, Cistus, and it's not a native rose or a native, it's not even well, I don't think it's actually even the rose family. They just call it that. Again, common names can be confusing, but Cistus is the genus, and it's native to, I believe, like the Mediterranean and like things like that. That's probably why it does really well with natives. So it works well, but it's not a true California native. But it's something. Cistus is the genus, and then rock rose would be the common name.
How misleading for this class.
I know. Well, we do try to highlight too that people can use both together. So, and it's hard to find strictly all pictures, different pictures of natives. This is your homework, guys. So you're just evaluating an irrigation system, and I want you to tell me with the irrigation system that you're looking at. So whatever the make and model is, figure that out. I don't really care about the make and model as much as I want to know what kind is it? Is it drip? Is it a sprinkler? And then use a manufacturer's spec sheet because that's so much easier to find the precipitation rate. So like that 0.96 or the 0.24, that slide that I had is for a specific one, and find out how to calculate, like you want to calculate how, ooh, wow. How long would you have to irrigate to get 1.5 inches? So again, I did that one of, or wait, I think I have the math here. Yes, okay, so if your sprinkler has a precipitation rate of 2 inches per hour, how long do I have to water to wet 1 inch? Not 1.5, but 1 inch. Then I just do the inches per that I want to water, divide it by the precipitation rate, and that'll give you the time you need. So find your precipitation rate and just go 1.5 inches divided by your precipitation rate, and that'll give you how much time. So I just want to say it should be this easy. If you're like doing a whole like review of math and how to do it, like it's going too hard. So you can email me and I will help you if it's really, really challenging, but it should be finding the precipitation rate and just doing 1.5 inches divided by that. And that will give you how much time. Ooh, I forgot, this is a great resource. I'm going to share it with the chat, you guys. This is not in your, oops. This is not in your, oh, why can't I highlight it?
I don't have any clients. I was wondering if you could just give us like an example.
Yeah, if you want, do the drip tape one that was 0.96. It's a 0.6 gallons per hour and it's 0.96 precipitation rate. So do that with the getting the 1.5. Good call on if there is no client. I'm going to put this in the chat. I know it's getting late, guys, but it's a really helpful resource that I feel like almost organizes and explains everything we talked about in like a nice little kind of article. If you guys are feeling like, what the fuck was that lecture and I need more clarification, that's a nice little kind of summary of a lot of the stuff we talked about. But that being said, sorry for the F word, guys. Just getting late. I'm having a weird day.
Claire, can you repeat that information? One, it was 0.96 precipitation per what would be
for the example one, it's
Yes.
a 0.6 gallons per hour dripped line, but the precipitation rate that the manufacturer gave was 0.96 inches per hour. So I want you to tell me if that is your example, that how much time would you need to set that irrigation system for to get 1.5 inches put down on your garden?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that should be enough. I always go right down to the wire, guys, but any other last questions, shout them out and or just email me. And otherwise, I won't see you for a week. Catch up on your homeworks, guys. Have a great like break, I guess, from class. And I'll see you on Tuesday, the 30th for the second part of irrigation. And I really recommend going to the irrigation optional workshop if you can. It's super helpful.